Welcome to the Emotional Eating Unwrapped podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, an emotional eating and weight loss coach for women looking to fall in love with eating, create healthy attachments with food, and lose weight sustainably. Today, I'm excited to be exploring how to change your mindset around food. Okay, and when I say mindset, I mean our attitude or our sense of entitlement. What I mean by this is we'll explore how to break free from that really pervasive thought that we have sometimes where we're like, I deserve to eat this. So the I deserve to eat this mentality. And we are going to explore what that's all about, why we have that mentality, and what we can do to reframe that mentality a little bit. Because that mentality of I deserve to eat this, which is one of the things that can keep us in an emotional eating cycle, a binge cycle, that cycle of yo-yo dieting, that shame spiral of feeling amazing about the diet, feeling enslaved by the diet, and then, feeling ashamed, then binging, and then feeling guilty, and then the whole thing starts over and over again. And we're going to talk about this mentality a little bit because it's so important to bring it up. It's so important to acknowledge that a lot of times this is how we feel, especially as we're reframing our relationship to food, as we're healing our attachments with eating. The reality is that along this journey, we do have to change habits. We do have to change mindsets. We do have to sometimes do things that our inner child, essentially, our inner tantrum, our primitive self, our reptilian self doesn't feel good about, right? And that's essentially what's happening here, right? When we say, I deserve to eat this, it's a very young, immature voice that's speaking. And that's really important to acknowledge. And so we also can acknowledge that we don't have to listen to this voice. And that's the essential skill that we want to try to train up within ourselves as we're healing from emotional eating, as we're trying to achieve permanent and sustaining weight loss, right, is really to remember that every voice that comes into our heads, that comes into our hearts, that gets big in our body, we don't have to listen to, and we don't have to believe. And I deserve to eat this mentality is one of those voices. However, it can be really, really hard to have a more mature relationship to the I deserve to eat this mentality for a few reasons. And some of those reasons I'm going to go into. And you might find yourself resonating with some of them. You might not find yourself resonating with some of them, but let's go into some of them right now. So many of us find ourselves justifying the I deserve to eat this for reasons like we're used to turning to food as a reward. So if we get a raise, if we finish a paper, right, or a homework assignment, if we have a long day of work and it was stressful, but we made it through, if we were in traffic for 3 hours and we finally got home, right, we use food as a reward. And the last thing that we really want to do is hold ourselves accountable or have a boundary with ourselves and say, I'm not going to have this as a reward. And so that's one of the ways that we find ourselves justifying the I deserve to eat this, because that's what we'll say. I deserve to have this. I just went through this hard thing and I deserve this. Okay. A second thing is, as adults, we don't want to feel like we're handcuffed by rules, because that's essentially how we felt as kids. So a way to justify our adultness is to eat whatever we want whenever we want it, right? That's one of the other reasons why we justify it, because it gives us a justification for our adultness. Okay, the third one is we've equated freedom and decompression with eating. So we feel like we need to eat in order to get that sense of calm or relaxation or resolution that we're looking to feel. The problem with this is that eating whatever and whenever we want, so eating whatever we want, whenever we want, is not synonymous with freedom at all. Okay, so the problem is that when we do this, we give in to the I deserve to eat this mentality. It's actually in direct conflict with our deeper goals and desires most of the time, right? So a lot of times it is. If we end up feeling guilty afterwards or it leads to a binge, we know for a fact that it was in direct conflict to our goals and desires, because a binge only happens when we don't feel like we have integrity around our decision. Okay, so when we buy in and give in to this I deserve to eat this mindset, and it's in direct conflict with our deeper goals and desires, we are actually disrespecting ourselves. And we reaffirm to ourselves on a subconscious level that we don't feel worthy of embodying our goals, of embodying the image and the life that we desire, that we say that we want, right? There's a gap between what we say we want our life to be and actually feeling like we deserve and can imagine ourselves living that life. You know, the truth is that while you absolutely should feel like you deserve to eat yummy things and, give yourself permission to indulge in ice cream, cake, pizza, whatever your yummy, food indulgent of choices, you absolutely do deserve that. There's nothing wrong with a food treat every now and again, but you want to make sure that you have made a decision ahead of time that this is what's truly aligned for you. So you're taking responsibility for your decision and you're not expecting it to provide you with any kind of emotional feeling or validation of your worth, right? Or of your adultness, or of, or giving you accolades, right? You're not using it for something, right? You're not eating to get something in return, right? You're eating it because you're like, I am in tune with the fact that I really want this, and it's coming from a place of integrity. And that is a skill. Knowing what that feels like is a skill. Let's talk about what is really going on when you are saying to yourself, I deserve to eat this. Let's ask ourselves some questions here, because ultimately, if you are eating something because it's emotionally connecting you to something else, or because you are using it to soothe yourself or get resolution or feel validated, then it's just going to hold you back from healing, from weight loss, and from your ultimate goals for yourself. So I want you to ask yourself, when you look back at the last time you thought to yourself, I deserve this, what were you really feeling, right? What were you really feeling in that moment? Were you feeling anxious? Were you feeling tired? Were you feeling dissociated, right? What were you really feeling? You can ask yourself, why do I feel like I deserve this? Is there an unmet need? Right? Is there an unmet need? Is there a lifestyle choice that feels out of alignment? Are there underlying feelings that are driving this thought? right? Is there something that I'm not taking a deeper look into in the context of my life, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a time management thing, whether it's a decision that was made that you might feel like you're locked into, but maybe you don't want to be locked into, right? So there's all of these underlying things. Ask yourself, what are these things that are driving this thought? Okay, so for example, I can speak from a client experience. I work with, some really, really just amazing women, and a lot of them have very, very demanding lives, whether that's their work or their families or both. There's a lot of that. And in general, I feel women have a lot more pressure and stress and demands on them emotionally because of some, gender roles and things that we're still trying to work through as a society. But there is a lot of that pressure, right? So a lot of the women I work with are under an immense amount of just life, feeling like they're under an immense amount of life pressure. And I have a client who will travel a lot for work and will get home from her travels and immediately just want to eat something that's not in alignment with her goals. That pie of pizza, or have something that's not aligned with her goals. Now, there's nothing wrong with the food itself. That's just what I want to be clear about. There's nothing wrong with the food itself. However, the way in which she's eating it is not aligned with her goals, right? So potentially she didn't prepare to eat this food, right? It wasn't like she said to herself earlier in the day, when I get home from my trip, I'm going to be so exhausted and I'm going to think about my day of eating so that I'm going to come home and I'm going to just, eat this whole pint of ice cream because that's what I really want. Oftentimes, that's not what's happening, right? Oftentimes, it isn't a pre-planned, intentional choice. Oftentimes, it is a reactive choice to an emotionally draining experience. And we're just turning to food and we feel like we deserve to eat this because we just got through it. Okay, so that is an example of what this would look like, right? So often the I deserve to eat this mentality is a habit that we subconsciously and unconsciously develop over time. And a habit will often become ingrained in our routine, our daily routine, our weekly routine, just our life routine, right? Without us even realizing it. So if we can recognize where this started from, right? If we can get to the root cause of where this I deserve to eat this started from, right? And what misalignments, energetic misalignments, lifestyle misalignments, our own self-care misalignments, right? Maybe we're ignoring ourselves, or there's, whatever misalignment is underneath, right? We can start to work to change the habit and frame how we feel about deserving food, right? Because the truth is that when you engage in the I deserve to eat this mentality, you're definitely not serving yourself at the highest level. You're definitely not. And this mindset often is not truly aligned with what your inner self actually wants. So it's easy to feel like you earned a treat after a grueling workout, or you should be able to splurge after, being rigid or, being good for a whole week, right? But more importantly, you should consider what I want you to think about even more than that is which version of you is driving your eating choices and whether these choices align with your core beliefs. Okay, so you want to ask yourself, who's driving the car here, right? So when you're like, I deserve to eat this, like I said in the beginning, is this the you, the evolved, mature, higher self, or is this the, more primitive self, right? Which self? And this question, is really something that encourages you to consider how you truly want to feel inside and whether the food you're about to have is serving you in that goal, right? You want to make sure that your actions and your choices are in alignment with your core beliefs so you can laminate those beliefs about yourself and actualize the life of your dreams, right? Another question you could also ask yourself is, does it even matter to you, right? Does it matter to me? Another question you could ask yourself is, does it matter to me if I'm aligned with my higher self? And if you feel like it doesn't, I would consider going deeper and asking yourself, why not? Right? So you definitely want to explore some of your inner identity narratives as you're exploring this conversation with yourself around, I deserve to eat this, right? If you're just like, you know what? I know I'm not aligned with my higher self, but I don't really care. That's interesting exploration, right? So you definitely want to understand, because there's deeper conditioning and maybe there's some inner child healing work that you need to do around why it doesn't matter to you whether or not you're making decisions that are aligned with your higher self. So it's so important that you give yourself the gift of knowing that you are truly worthy, right? And that it's so important that when you do come up against this, I deserve to eat this, you just take a pause, right? So if you hear anything from this episode today, if that statement comes into your brain, just remember what I'm telling you today, right? That just pause and ask yourself, what is underlying this? Because you can give yourself the gift of knowing that you're truly worthy, and not just of a one-time binge of your favorite treat, right? Like you are truly worthy of long-term self-appreciation, self-love, self-care, and you're worthy to be truly aligned with your highest self. And don't forget to join us again next week with another new episode about emotional eating, because I love sharing these insights with you, these conversations with you, just these mindset shifts with you so you can start losing weight and keep it off with sustainable strategies and lasting change, because that's what we really want to do. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit from this message. I also have lots of free resources on my website to help you on your journey to loving food and losing weight. All you need to do is go to bewellbyak.com. And until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.